Hello and welcome to Business Incorporated live on Channels Television, where we track markets, economy, and of course we see how all that affects your pockets. Here are the stories that set your agenda. Zimbabwe's US dollar inflation rises to 2.8% in May. Zambia is expected to post another strong maize harvest on improved output. And Mozambique rejects $2 billion claims linked to stalled Total Energy's LNG project. Great to have you join us for this half hour. I'm Will Ibang. It's a public holiday in most parts of the world, and you're celebrating the Muslim holiday. It's good to have you join us. And we begin, as always, with commodities space. We'll check in with the oil markets and see how they're performing today. Look at the markets. We see global oil markets trading downward, especially Brent and WTI, but we see natural gas up 0.76%. Outlier, Brent is down 2.61% at $96.95 a barrel. WTI down 3.73% at $90.38 a barrel. Investors are still keeping an eye on the U.S.-Iran peace talks and wondering what's going to be happening there, and that's actually keeping uncertainty in that market. Let's look at the metal space and see how they're performing today. We see metals all down today. We see spot gold down 1.24% at $4,446. We also see spot silver down today 2.42%. Looking at platinum, that's also down 1.02% at $1,931.70 per ounce, and copper is also down 0.61%, as now at $6.35. Now, basically, that's what you have on the screen there. But let's look at what's happening in other markets. We've seen Zambia expected to post strong earnings, a strong maize harvest this season, according to National Crop Survey. Now, preliminary estimates point to improved output, and that's supported by favorable weather and expanded cultivation across key farming regions. The report suggests sufficient supplies for domestic consumption with potential surplus for regional exports. Authorities say the harvest could ease food security concerns and support price stability in local markets. Up next, we see Zimbabwe's annual inflation in United States dollars. In terms, that rose to 2.8% in May. That's up from 2.2% in April, and that's according to Zimbabwe's National Statistics Agency, ZimStat. The agency says prices, as measured by the all items US dollar consumer price index, that increased to 125.19 in May compared to 124.76 in April and 121.76 a year earlier. Now, on a month-to-month basis, inflation slowed to 0.3%. from 1.1% in April, reflecting easing short-term price pressures. And let's now go down to Mozambique and see what's happening there. The country has rejected claims worth about $2 billion linked to the stalled Total Energy's LNG project in the country's north. The government says the demands are unjustified and based on disputed cost estimates following the project suspension after security concerns in Cabo Delgado. The LNG project was halted in 2021 after militant attacks forced a force majeure declaration, with discussions now ongoing over a possible restart. Now let's look at what's happening still in Africa and look at the Caribbean. A lot of cooperation there. Renewed call for Africa and the Caribbean to strengthen economic and cultural ties, and that's gaining momentum. We see the Grenadian Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell pushing for deeper cooperation between both regions. Now, speaking during the African Liberation Day celebration themed African-rooted, diaspora rising, identity reclaiming, the Grenadian leader described Africans and Caribbean nations as people bound by shared history, identity, and destiny. Mitchell praised Nigerians living in Grenada for their growing contributions to the country's economy and national life, calling their presence a symbol of reconnection across the Atlantic. He said the relationship between Africa and the Caribbean must now move beyond symbolic gestures toward practical partnerships in trade, investment, diplomacy, and innovation. The Prime Minister also stressed that reclaiming African identity means recognizing a history that predates slavery, one built on civilization, culture, and global influence. He added that stronger people-to-people connections and economic collaboration will be critical to building a united future for Africans and the diaspora. Also speaking at the event, founder of the Esther Matthew Tolanga Foundation, Esther Tolanga, called for stronger Africa-Caribbean cooperation in education, trade and investment, saying Africans everywhere must work together to shape and tell their own story. Fantastic developments going on there. But moving on now, small businesses are the backbone of Nigeria's economy and generating nearly half of the country's GDP and employing almost 9 in every 10 workers. Yet, most of them have never accessed a single government program designed to help them. Charles Odi is the man charged with changing that narrative as Director General of the Small and Medium Enterprises Development Agency of Nigeria, SMEDAN. When we sat down to speak, I started by asking him about the moment his journey with SMEDAN began, what went through his mind when, at just 35, President Tinubu called him to lead the agency.
Before the day that it was announced, it was the 13th of October 2023. I remember vividly because that day happened to be Shei's birthday. And before that day, a couple of people had released some things on Twitter to say it was going to happen. Some other people say it wasn't going to happen. And, a lot of things were just ongoing. So I just zeroed my mind. I left it to God. And, then it got announced. And I think the very first person that I saw after it was announced was Kamal. Kamal is currently the PA to Mr. President. And then myself and Kamal then went in and we saw Shei. And then, from then on, it's been a journey, I can say. It's been a journey.
I must say, you spent years building initiatives for small businesses before this appointment. We have the 100 Talks, the Nigeria Small Business Summit, the 25 under 25. Did all of that feel like a preparation for this moment, or did this scale of this role, did it surprise you?
No, it wasn't a surprise. What we did with the Nigeria's 25 under 25 awards it was something called the Nigeria's Youth Entrepreneurship Leadership Program. We go across the country, the 774 local governments, looking for young people under the age of 25 who are doing phenomenal things and contributing to socio-economic development in Nigeria. And at the time, currently till now, 70% of Nigeria's population is under the age of 25. So we focus on that demography because we had said that if we can identify these people at this young age and then just support them, encourage them, nurture them, and point them in the right direction, that they can become, phenomenal entrepreneurs. And the model worked. Just 10 years after, we have people who we looked at the time, Zina Anumudu, Bidemi Zekarau, Yasmin Belosage. These are phenomenal entrepreneurs who have stood the test of 10 years. And then every year, there are new set of entrepreneurs that we identify, and we try to support, give them all kind of support, from marketing support to financial support to workforce support, just supporting the workforce, to guidance, whatever it is that they needed, because they were young people at the time. And I was a young person. We were probably peers, but we are just focused on that because we believe that those set of people just needed that kind of push to grow. Of course, there were many of them who, down the line changed their minds and went to look for jobs. But those who started at that young age, it was a phenomenal thing. We also started an online publication where we're just telling the stories of these young people. We started a community where these young people all belong to, and they could all leverage each other, because the entrepreneurial journey sometimes can be very lonely. So they needed to be each other's crutches in the community. And that is similar to what SMEDAN is doing right now. That's what we're doing at SMEDAN. At SMEDAN, we are identifying these young people where, right now, we have the opportunity to change policies. We're currently changing the policy that will affect the MSME ecosystem for the next 5 years. We're providing finances, non-financial support as well, guidance, very similar. So, like you said, it prepared me to be the DG of SMEDAN.
So 18 months in now, this is like 2023 up to now. What's the single biggest thing you say you are most proud of right now that you've achieved?
So it was the president's 8-point agenda. So we're supporting the 8-point agenda. What we had ours called GROW, GROW, G stands for guidance, R stands for resources, O stands for opportunities, and W stands for workforce support. And that's the mandate for the MSME ecosystem. We want to provide our small businesses all the guidance that they need. Many of them are confronted with regulatory bottlenecks. We want to point them in the right direction. When they come to Smedan, those who want to attract investment, we can point them to NIPC. Those who want to export, we can give them export license to NEPC. Those who want to register their businesses, we already have the partnership with CAC. Those who want standards, we have a conversation with SON and NAFDAC. So we're helping them with that kind of guidance. In terms of resources, we're very big on that. We're helping our small businesses with financial and non-financial resources. In terms of opportunity, the Nigerian market is a 250 million market. The African market is a 1.4 billion market, and we have extended the AFCFTA agreement. And so one of the things that we wanted to do is to make our small businesses be very much aware of the opportunities. We signed an agreement with the UAE, we signed the ETIP agreement with the UK, we signed the ETLS with the ECOWAS, and so these are opportunities that our small businesses can take advantage of. And so we are always painting that picture for them and preparing them for the opportunities. And sometimes we take them for these trade shows, other times we support them to go for these trade shows. And the last, which is workforce support. We are very big on trainings. We're training our small businesses week in, week out to make sure that they can access whatever it is, just democratizing access for them. So answering your question in short, what's the most singular thing that we have done? The most singular thing and the most proud thing that I think that we have achieved is firstly building the track, right? Democratizing access for our small businesses. Our small businesses right now can access funds from as little as 250,000 naira to as much as 10 million naira as nano and micro businesses. As small businesses right now have the opportunity to talk to their counterparts in different other countries because of signed MOUs for them to take advantage of. Our small businesses right now can actually do business at a reduced rate because we've built infrastructure, co-working spaces. For instance, our garment and textile workshop in Abuja, we provided the sewing machines, we provided power, and our small businesses just come there with their products and then they turn them to finished products and they can go sell in the market, right? So they don't bother about buying the sewing machines, they don't bother about power, they don't bother about maintaining sewing machines. And we've negotiated MOUs with God is Good Logistics to the tune of 20%, with the Nigerian Postal Service to the tune of 15%, where they can distribute their products across the 36 states at the FCT at a discounted rate.
You mentioned access to credit there, that they can access, money for their businesses. Where can they go to? Are there specific institutions that provide this credit to these small businesses?
Yes, so firstly they come to Smedan and then we point them in the right direction. For us, we provide the grants. Because we don't have a bank right now, we have bank relationships with commercial and even government entities. So a small business in Anambra, for instance, after they come to Smedan, we have an MOU signed with the Anambra state government to the tune of 1 billion naira, where small businesses in that state can access funding at single-digit interest rates. We've done the same thing with my predecessor in Katsina. We've done the same thing in Enugu. We've done the same thing in Zamfara, where these small business owners can, in those states, excluding the other kind of financing resources that we have with Sterling and the other banks, they can go to their state government and access this fund in their states for three purposes: for them to buy work equipment to continue to do the work that they're doing, for them to rent workspaces, procure workspaces for them to work on that, and for them to add to their working capital, their trade capital to continue to work.
Oh, that's fantastic. You also, in your first 100 days, claimed 15,000 jobs were created. In the first quarter of 2025, 90,000 jobs is what you recorded. How are these numbers being measured? Do you get this data, and how do you verify that a job was actually created as a result of what you did?
We have a program called the Conditional Grant Scheme, where we give you a grant on a condition. That condition is that you're able to employ at least one person. So we give you some funds, and then you, as a business owner, would then employ either an apprentice or employ a salesperson. That's one job that's been created. We have a skill acquisition center and a co-working space that we have created. We did one in Osun State, we did the one in Katsina State, we did the one in Abuja. We're moving to Lagos, we're about to launch in Oyo. So my philosophy for the ecosystem is to go from one to one to one to many. So we create these co-working spaces where you, as a fashion designer, can come, bring your adivare like this, you sew your adivare, and then you can go and sell. That's one job we've created. So we're counting that, we're measuring the amount of people that come into our co-working space, the amount of people we give this fund in terms of grants, and the amount of people that we are able to meet when we go out in our monitoring and evaluation sessions. And so we're able to create these numbers. And we have the names, the phone numbers, the BVNs, the NINs. Because Mr. President gave us a strict mandate that everyone that we are attending to, we need to make sure that we get their national identity number. Because someone can exist in society, right? You can be a full-fledged human. If you don't have NIN, if you don't have BVN, if you don't have your passports, if you don't have a driver's license, the society does not know you. Or you are a free human, living, breathing, and you're in that society, but you have not been captured by the government. So one way in which we are able to capture them is to get their NINs. I
know you've been very vocal about formalizing the SMEs in Nigeria, especially they are more concentrated in the informal sector. 40 million SMEs in Nigeria. How far have you gone in doing this? What have you achieved? What numbers are we looking at? So I'm again grateful to Mr. President. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu earmarked waived 250,000 of our informal small businesses to get formalized, and that means somewhere around the 6 billion naira has been waived for government funding. And so what happens is that we're not taking these informal businesses, the women at the corner of the street, the women in the market, we're making them become formalized businesses, not so much so that they will pay taxes, because what Mr. President has done again, and I'm very grateful to Mr. President, is that he has woven company income tax for many of our small and medium businesses, right? Businesses that are not generating up to 100 million naira annually are excluded from company income tax. So all of that is excluded for even those that are earning up to the minimum wage, excluded from paying taxes. So that's good news to our small business owners. So what is left for us is for us to start to formalize them and teach them and start their journey from where they are to where they ought to be. From nano business in some climb to micro, from micro to small to medium. If you were to achieve everything you set out to do in your agenda before your tenure end, what does a Nigeria SME sector, what would it look like? Paint a picture for me. It will look like a sector that has gotten their hope renewed. It will be a sector where small businesses have democratized access to infrastructure, the infrastructure for small businesses to work, access to finance. There's financing for our small businesses, cheap and affordable finances for our small businesses, access to coordinated government support. Because our small businesses are facing different government entities at different levels. And so that's why we have set up these growth centers where we're coordinating that. The small businesses that need to export, we help them with the export license. Like Smedan is the first point of call. When you come to Smedan, we'll point you in the right direction and try to solve a problem. So it's an ecosystem that thrives, an ecosystem that democratizes access, an ecosystem that will unlock a lot of opportunities. That's the ecosystem that I'm going to live behind. So in 5 years from now, the challenges you cited above, we all know still exists. What would that mean for Nigeria's economic development? Right now, the MSME ecosystem is contributing approximately half of Nigeria's GDP. Right now, imagine where we have democratized access for the small businesses. They have the funding that they need. They have the support from government. They have their business partners across the ECOWAS region and even Africa and beyond. They have all the opportunities available to them. We're supporting their workforce, or providing resources for them, or providing guidance for them. What that will look like will be even more than 50% of Nigeria's GDP. We employ more than 80 million Nigerians. We'll do so much more that we will export more, manufacture more, and we'll grow Nigeria's economy. So if those were to not work in 5 years, are you saying Nigeria's economy is going to be in trouble? No, if those will work, because the reforms that are being put in place by Mr. President is actually going to make it work. But just right now is a painful cycle. And I remember I just came from Rwanda when Mr. President tried to explain it, and the analogy he used was like a pregnant woman. The 9 months of carrying a pregnancy will be very painful. The woman will experience excruciating pain even at the end of the 9 months when the baby is about to be born, right? All through that 9 months, the woman's life will be somewhat discombobulated. But as soon as the baby is born, there'll be joy. So our small businesses right now will be experiencing a lot of, because we're testing a lot of things, right? But as soon as the reforms are working, as soon as another 2-3 years, they'll start to see the fruits of their patience. A vision and a challenges set for himself there. Charles Ode, the Director General of Smedon, speaking with Channels Television. We'll take a quick break now. Business Incorporated continues right after. Don't go away. Welcome back. Now, it's a holiday for most major equities in Africa and the Middle East for the Muslim festivities. But let's take a quick check on what's happening. South Africa is open, though we see trading down at intraday, nearly 0.5%. But Nigeria is closed very quickly there, 0.48%. At intraday. And now let's look very quickly at U.S. markets. They're open today. Very little change in early trading. That's pre-market trading, and that was driven by tech rally, and that pushed the S&P 500 and Nasdaq. But we see the futures, they are slightly in green territory, reflecting continued investor optimism. Now let's see Asia markets, how they performed. Very, very mixed their session for today. We see balanced. Investors are watching the geopolitical tensions there, especially with the Muslim holiday. Japan's Nikkei and South Korea, that sustained momentum, strong momentum there. We see it up over 2%, 2.25%, 8,228 points there. Hang Seng in China is down 1.06%, and Shanghai Index also down. Nifty 50 in India is also down. But for a look at European markets, I'm joined by Lars Alter in Berlin. Hi, Lars. A very green outlook for markets in Europe, I see. Automakers driving gains?
Yeah, it's exactly true. Well, European markets are in the green, but it is, I have to say, not extremely green. London just barely up, just a fraction. The other markets, Paris, Madrid, and Frankfurt, doing maybe a bit better, up about 0.5%. However, specifically looking at Frankfurt, there is really not much news to back it up. Actually, we got the latest report today from the Council of Economic Experts here, and they are cutting their growth forecast for the German economy to 0.5% for this year, and that is in line with what the German government was already expecting. And it's also no surprise, obviously, with the impact of the war in Iran and the closing of the Strait of Hormuz. So it's not really news, and maybe that is why it doesn't have more of a negative impact on today's markets.
But it's just been a few days now that the EU finally signed that trade agreement with the US. But that doesn't mean calmer times are coming for the two sides. Because the EU is working on a major fine against a US tech giant. Lars, what can you tell us about this development?
Yeah, many were certainly hoping for calmer times in terms of transatlantic trade, but here we go. I mean, the EU is on the verge of imposing a record fine on Google for violating digital regulations. Specifically, Brussels accuses Google, as well as its parent company Alphabet, of prioritizing their own services within their online search results. There is no official word yet on what fine this could lead to, but there are rumors of a fine in the high nine-figure range that would be then the highest penalty the EU has ever imposed for a violation of the Digital Markets Act. With that law, the EU aims tighten antitrust regulations. We're hearing from Commission President Ursula von der Leyen that she will have the final word on this matter, and she's also the one who will have to deal with the political consequences, because one thing is sure, the US and particularly President Trump, they will not like it. A decision now, a final decision, is expected to be officially announced before the summer recess.
But what reactions now? You mentioned the U.S. What reactions can we expect from U.S. if the EU goes along with this record fine?
Oh, it will definitely lead to another escalation in this ongoing trade spat that we've been seeing. But Brussels, it seems, is not too afraid of that anymore. As a matter of fact, the old US-EU partnership that had long supported all transatlantic trade is effectively dead. And even this recently signed and implemented trade deal is so bad that many economists here have called it a capitulation by the EU. Anyway, the US government has already stated that it will react to any fines against big tech companies. Trump has repeatedly threatened the EU on this subject, and he said that he viewed penalties against U.S. tech giants as tariffs, and he would respond accordingly with retaliatory tariffs. And at the same time, his vice president, J.D. Vance, has actually moved the entire thing from the economic into the political realm. Vance actually suggested that the U.S. might withdraw from NATO in response to the EU's digital regulations. At this point, only one thing is safe to assume: the U.S. government will not accept the Google case without a response.
Thank you so much, Lars Alter from Berlin, joining us and giving us a perspective. Lars, it's a holiday here in Nigeria. I don't know, is it not a holiday in Europe? But we're hoping that we get a breather soon. Thank you so much, Lars, for joining us.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Will.
And that's it on Business Incorporated. Thanks for watching. I'm Will Ibong, and I'll see you next time.